I mean, I want to look forward to a little bit of Christmas here. I mean, in terms of this question, will you be breaking lockdown rules over Christmas? I suppose we should kind of widen that out a little bit, really. As to, will you be breaking lockdown rules? But I'm intrigued about the Christmas thing. I have to say, you shouldn't be breaking the rules over this. Okay, I have to just put that out there straight away. Christmas in a prison cell is not ideal. Tinsel is thin on the ground and the turkey comes in packets. You don't want to go there. Even if the lockdown ends on December the 2nd, of course, we'd still be left with potentially the tier system and the rule of 6. So that kind of throws out quite a lot of Christmas family celebratory potential. Today, research shows 4 out of 10 young people say they will break the coronavirus lockdown rules this Christmas. The survey found 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds said they would flout the restrictions over the festive period. This was a YouGov poll. In the over 65s, 15% admitted they will go rogue when they were asked. 15% of OAPs will break the law in order to have their Christmas. It's not right. I have to stress it would be stupid to breach the rules. They're only here, of course, for a short time. We should also throw that in there. But there is a kind of a madness, an insanity about what is happening in our world right now. People are breaking the law. And it's happening all over the place. 0344 499 1000. And have a listen to this. This is what happened when... Turn your radios up. Are you ready for this? This is what happened when the police turned up at a gym in Essex where the owner had refused to close.
Someone in charge, or we can have to deal with this down the police station?
We can talk here.
Okay, what our plan is to fine the manager £1,000 and each of the members using the gym £200.
Okay.
So if you can identify the manager to me, otherwise I'll assume that's you and you'll be getting the £1,000 fine.
I do not consent to any fines.
Okay,
I'm not entering into a
contract. So you're going to refuse to provide me with your details?
I'm not giving you any details.
Okay, so then you'll be arrested and we'll obtain other police.
I'm a living woman and we're under common law.
Okay, I disagree because we're going to be dealing with it from statute, through legislation that's been put in place due to the COVID legislations. So whatever defence you wish to raise, you can do that in court, but I'm just explaining to you how we're looking to deal with this. So, are you going to provide us with your details so we can issue this £1,000 fine?
I'm a living woman.
Okay,
We're
I'll take
operated
that as a
under
no
common
then.
law. We're operated under common law.
Okay, at this point then, I'm arresting you for breach of COVID regulations. You do not have to say anything that may harm the defence. If you do not mention or question something you later on in court, anything you do say may be given in evidence.
There it is. That was not an episode of The Bill, but that took place in a gym in Essex yesterday. The owner, manager, refused to comply with the regulations and got herself arrested. So £1,000 fine for her troubles. And then this kind of weird... I kind of fall into two camps here. It's not the first time I've seen it. We'll be speaking, by the way, to a gym owner later in the Northwest who is also breaching COVID rules. I think opened again today for the first time since being closed down, and one would assume fined as well. I refuse to enter into a contract and we're under common law. Look, whatever Herbert told these people to cut and paste some kind of ancient legal cant that they think might cut it with the old bill when they show up round your place is a blithering idiot. They've just cost you £1,000, possibly more if you do it again. Look, whether we like it or not, we're going to talk to a lawyer, by the way, just to get this right, because the law it's tricky. And I'm uncomfortable with it, really uncomfortable. What I'm most uncomfortable with, and I think a few people have made this point as well, is once this is all over, do we get rid of these laws? Do these new COVID restriction laws go away? That is crucial, by the way. I mean, just an example of the kind of madness we found ourselves in. 15 police officers masked to the teeth. COVID masks, by the way, not some kind of undercover job. 15 at a gym in order to carry out the arrest. Obviously, they were there in case anybody in the gym kicked off as well. So I understand the police's position. In fact, I sympathise with the police's position. Is that really what the police want to be spending their time doing? Turning up at gyms and Lord knows where else because people are not keeping to the law? 0344 499 1000. What is it you're not believing? What is it you're not getting? What is it you're not following? What is it that you're so uncomfortable with? Because I'm uncomfortable. I think this is a terrible, terrible time, a very grim and dark chapter in our history. The idea that these rules exist is bothersome, but I'm kind of willing to go along with the ride if I think it's for the right reason. However, nobody so far has told me, I stand to be corrected, that these rules will be thrown into a big old governmental shredder once this thing is over. So you bring new rules in, Parliament votes on it all. Yep, we agree to that. Another lockdown. You can turn up at the gym, the shop, wherever. Whoever's not meant to be open, we'll turn up there and we can arrest folk and fine them £1,000, 10,000 quid, whatever it happens to be. I'm uncomfortable that I don't know where those laws go afterwards. But what's the thinking on this? I mean, a gym, as many people have said, could be one of the safer places because gyms are pretty good at practicing social distancing. They're pretty good at adhering to all the rules and regulations, and they're a place to keep you fit as well at a time when keeping fit would be a good thing, you might imagine. What are we not believing? This is Sir Simon Stevens. Now, he's the head of the NHS. This guy is a brain box when it comes to matters medical. He runs the NHS, so you might think he knows a thing or two about it. So you just heard what the gym owner said. I refuse to enter into a contract. We're under common law. I'm sure she was just moments away from citing the Magna Carta without probably knowing the first thing about Magna Carta. Nonetheless, this is the head honcho of the NHS. This is what he said yesterday at that Downing Street press conference.
As we think about the next few weeks, in a sense, we already know what is likely to happen, because today's infection is the intensive care order book for a fortnight's time.
There it is. Today's infection is tomorrow's order book for intensive care. So who are you with, the gym owner or the man that runs the NHS? 0344 499 1000. I mean, they are two sort of examples or components of this argument. I want to throw in the question as well about Christmas lockdown rules. I mean, it's 50 days away or something crazy like that. Are you going to be breaking those rules at Christmas? 40% of young people said they would. 15% of over 65s said they would also break the law in order to spend Christmas with their families in the way they want to spend Christmas with their families. 0344 499 1000. What's the bit here? I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable. I hate it. I'm sure you do too. But I sense I have to go along with this. It's the law of the land. If we're still here in a year's time, then I might be getting a bit itchy and suspicious. But what's the point here where you would side with the gym owner and not Sir Simon Stevens, who runs the NHS? It's an interesting time. Lots of people on that survey, 4 out of 10 young people say they would break the COVID rules over Christmas, according to a YouGov poll. 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds said they would flout the restrictions. Even 15% of over 65 said they would. Across all age groups, a quarter of people said they would definitely break the rules during the holiday, which are expected to return to the tier system after December the 1st, of course. Let's get a legal perspective on this. We're talking in a moment to Mike Neville, former Met Police detective. Chris Daw, of course, QC, barrister, broadcaster, author of Justice on Trial, which is out now, by the way. Chris, the law of the land, as I understand it, despite these new rules, everybody still seems a little confused. Are they confusing?
They are deeply confusing. Can I just, first of all, Ian, agree with you in your remarks that you made about police officers at this time? The police have got an impossible job. They've been landed with regulations that few people understand, and many police officers don't fully understand. They've not had the training, they've not had it explained to them clearly. And I have to say they're between a rock and a hard place. And
Sure.
I've got enormous sympathy for uniformed officers on the streets who are trying their best in impossible circumstances to keep the peace and to maintain public safety. So anyone who's criticising individual police officers or the whole of policing, I think really needs to have a rethink. Of course, mistakes are made, as you pointed out, but the police officers are really doing a great job. But coming back to your question, so are the rules confusing? They're confusing, and they're partly confusing because they're really not necessary in the form that they are. But to be crystal clear, you can go to work if you can't work from home. You can assemble with one other person in an outdoor public place, but not indoors and not in private gardens or private places. So those are the key rules that matter. You can leave your home to exercise, to do shopping, and for a range of other purposes, but otherwise you're breaking the law.
What's going on then when people are? I mean, the clip we played, I don't know if you heard it, from the woman who runs the gym in Essex seemed to cite some kind of Magna Carta-esque kind of reference. She said, "I'm a living woman." I'm not sure what that means, and I am not entering into a contract or something of that order.
Yeah, well, she's obviously misunderstanding how the law works, I'm afraid. The fact is that gyms, public gyms or commercial gyms, are prohibited from opening under the regulation that came into force yesterday. So she can't operate on a commercial basis without breaking the law and risking a very
So when we've seen these people, there was another gym owner also cited the Magna Carta, essentially suggesting that overrides anything that's been decided more recently.
Well, that's not true. We do have the Human Rights Act, of course, which does trump any legislation, or at least legislation must be interpreted so that it's compatible with the Human Rights Act. And I think that there are some very difficult conflicts between our basic rights as British citizens, which are long-standing, even before the Human Rights Act, and the infringements of those basic rights that have been brought into play with virtually no scrutiny. Parliament's not even really looked at it. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of pages of regulations. And the MPs basically just not put it through on the nod on Wednesday without really questioning it. And that's really quite disappointing, because just because there's a virus, which of course we all know is an important issue in our society, doesn't mean that we throw all of those basic rights that our grandfathers fought for in World War II out of the window. I mean, and it's sad if that's happening and people accept it, because it's a slippery slope here.
Indeed. Stay with us, Chris. Mike Neville is a former Detective Chief Inspector at Scotland Yard. I mean, difficult for your former colleagues, this one, Mike, as we were just talking here. I mean, the rules are sketchy, even if you are a cop.
They are, and what I fear as well is a whole generation being lost to the police, because of some silly enforcement. I mean, we saw fences being put up at Manchester University, so students feel they're being caged in, and I see a lot of young people who are, almost being criminalised, given £10,000 fines. I mean, you get a caution. You get a caution for having a knife or some drugs, and you get a £10,000 fine for organising a firework party or something. But the police have such a difficult line to tread. I agree with the lawyer. 3 hours to take away British rights that have existed for centuries is very worrying. And the police don't want to be seen as some sort of robotic stars that enforce these, because when this all ends, we can only hope that we go back to the traditional British policing, which is policing by consent. I find it a very worrying time for police.
That is, I think, one of the main points. And Chris Daw QC, I mean, on that point, I made it at the beginning, Chris. What's worrying me about this, it's all very well introducing new laws. What happens when this whole COVID thing is over? Are those laws put in the legal bin? Do they spookily remain on the books?
Well, the coronavirus regulations are time limited, so the regulations and the powers that are attached to them will run out unless they are renewed. But I think you make a good point, which is that we set a precedent here. For me, I don't think the police should ever been involved in this. It was a public health issue. It needed a public health response, not a law enforcement response. And that's why I have such enormous sympathy for police officers, because they're being asked to do a job which is fundamentally not a policing job. The public health system should be in the hands of public health officials, of local authorities. We saw civilian wardens, for example, enforcing social distancing in some of the London parks.
So it should be civilian council employees, as it were, that go around to gyms, not police officers. Mike Neville,
Absolutely.
I mean, does that sound more palatable to you, Mike, instead of this barrage of work that's been bestowed on your former colleagues, and of course, besmirching their good name in the process as well?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you get things like a debt enforcement and parking, it's all down to the council. And the police are there if it all goes wrong, if somebody becomes violent. But with these regulations, the police are involved straight away. And it really is impacting on this policing by consent. I'm always mindful of Sir Robert Mark, who was a commissioner in the Mets, in the 70s. And he said the police should win by appearing to lose. That's how the British police should be. And we've lost that. And all that's going to happen is all these laws put in the bin, a 73-year-old being arrested for trying to get the grandmother out of a care home, or flying drones up in the sky to stop people doing dog walking. The police took a tightrope, and remember that when this all ends, we've got to go back to those values.
Indeed. And Chris Daw, final word from you, Chris. The issue of law and law made in a rather rushed fashion is being challenged by some people. They're taking it through the courts, and Lord Sumption and others have made the case that they could be on sticky ground. You alluded to it. Do you imagine, just briefly, whether anyone would have much success in trying to take this through the courts and get billions of pounds of compensation for the British public?
I don't think it's a question of compensation. These are judicial review challenges against the legitimacy of the law. I think eventually they'll end up in the European Court of Human Rights. The problem is it will be too little, too late. The whole approach of this government has been flawed from day one. They just should have explained this properly to the public, and they should have introduced recommendations rather than draconian laws that involve old people being arrested and handcuffed, setting the police against the public. It was unfair to the police, it's unfair to the public, and I'm afraid it hasn't worked. Let's be honest, coronavirus is worse than it has been in months and months. So whatever they've done, it's not working.
Chris, thank you. Chris Daw QC, barrister and broadcaster, author of Justice on Trial. That is out now. Mike Neville was the other voice you heard there, former Met Police detective. Over to you on this one, 03444 499 1000. Will you be breaking the law? And specifically at Christmas, but in any other respect as well. We're all ears at this end. By the way, I have to say, just a legal caveat, don't. You shouldn't. It's wrong, it's bad, and you might end up in the chiller.